Hey, how are y'all doing today? This is episode 9, I'm pretty sure. And last episode was our second pay-per-view, Last Man Standing. We had quite a bit go down on that, so if you haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend checking that out first, because we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Cameron Vesey enters to start the broadcast. Adrian Garcia chimes in on commentary. You're looking at a man who just beat the number one contender in the middle of the ring this past Saturday. But more importantly, you're looking at the most dangerous version of Cameron Vesey yet. Supremely confident, and the only mountain left for him to climb is winning that belt and holding on to it as long as he can. By now, Vesey's in the ring and he has a mic in his hand. I'm sure last week a lot of people thought that they could have predicted how this show would open. Everyone's hero, Aaron Knight, would waltz out here, call out our CWA champion, Christian Price. There'd be a bit of a back and forth, and we could all move forward with the main event of Clash Classic firmly in place. Well, I'm out here kicking things off, and that's because I am proud to say that I am the reason that none of that happened as planned. No, no, no. I'm out here. Not a game, not your number one contender. I am. Now, the official word is that Aaron is at home recovering from his injuries, but I think it's more like he's licking his wounds. You talked big game for weeks, but in the end, I didn't need any surprises or any cheap shots to win. I beat you fair and square and proved that unlike you, I back up my talk. So why don't I throw another wrench in the gears? At Clash Classic, I propose, and out walks a returning Skip Bo. Vesey stops in his tracks. Bo's music isn't even playing, and he marches straight towards the ring. Davis Diederich points out that while Bo was set to appear and return tonight, it was supposed to be in a match later on. I hate to ruin your little celebration here, Cameron, Skip says, but I believe you and I have unfinished business. You want to talk about what your plans are for or what your plans for Clash Classic are? You need to be worried about making it there in the first place. Cameron throws his mic down and gets in his face before Boken goes on. I don't see any need to drag this out. Seeing as I'm already on the card tonight, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk out of this ring and straight back to Steve DeColt's office. I'm going to tell him I don't care what strings he needs to pull or if it pisses off anyone at the network, but you and I are having a good old-fashioned fight tonight, whether he sanctions it or not. The crowd's like going crazy at this point. They're hyped up. Bo walks backwards and slowly steps out of the ring, and the crowd, they're chanting, "You effed up! You effed up!" at Cameron Vesey. Um, yeah, that's a great way to start the show with an 89. Um, yeah, pretty good. All right. In a good match, the DeColt boys defeated the Montreal Mafia in 12:54 when Ricky DeColt pinned Mark Raisin with a DeColt 45. Um, it looks like the DeColt boys may squash their opponents early on, but it's an impressive display of chain wrestling and counters by Dermot Ayers that get the Montreal Mafia back in the mix. But the DeColt boys are the DeColt boys, and they're too much to topple. And Ricky wins by hitting that DeColt 45. 66. Tag team specialist for Mark Raisin and Dermot Ayers. All right. Gonna grab a drink real quick while I switch over, guys. All right. We have another really good segment, dang. We get a video of Brooke Tyler at her locker after her loss against Lauren Easter in the last woman standing match. She's not her usual boisterous and cocky self. She says that Easter beat her at her own game, and she can't even be mad, just disappointed in herself. If I can't get it done when it matters the most, then maybe it's time the franchise needs to rethink her game. Segment got an 88. Enjoyed the freedom to go off script. We're just getting everybody hotter. Segment after segment, let's go. In a decent match, Princeton Price defeated Omar Brown in 7:51 by submission. So Brown tosses Price around in the early going, but Price uses the ref as a human shield to stop from getting hit with a splash in the corner. He gets a cheap shot after all the commotion, and from there on he has the match in hand. Despite the strength advantage, Brown tries to come back a couple of times, but he can't get the upper hand. And Price wins after a submission. They have pretty good chemistry. Lifted the match. That's good to know. Princeton Price seemed off his game, so another one we could maybe revisit later and get a better rating. Alright, in a decent match, Dante Dunn defeated Dapper Danny Draper in 8-11 by pinfall. The match never seems to be in doubt, and it's more of a showcase for Dunn's offense more than anything. Draper gets a few good shots in, including a near fall after a cutter, but otherwise, like the most noteworthy thing is Adrian Garcia, Tom Townsend. They're just arguing at the announce desk over whether they think that Dante Dunn's a crybaby who thinks the rules don't apply to him, or if Steve DeColt is trying to make an example because he dared to challenge his authority. You can obviously guess which side either of them came down on that. Segment gets a 68, and again, Dante Dunn and Dapper Danny Draper have pretty good chemistry, and it lifted the match. Again, another one to look into later on down the line as well. Alright, Steve DeColt is shown in his office, and he announces that the card for tonight will change. Sean McFly's fourth challenge will no longer be the main event. Instead, it will be up next, and Skip Bow's match will slot into the main event and now be against Cameron Vesey. Pretty simple. Just kind of, I don't know. I like it when the stuff gets explained more so in like my actual like wrestling and stuff like that. If they're gonna like have something change out of nowhere, or something impromptu or anything like that, I at least like them to attempt to like explain it as some sort of admin or whatever. But yeah, 82. All right. Christian Price enters the ring and makes his way out to a chorus of boos and calls out Sean McFly. He enters in his ring gear and does his usual entrance. He even walks past Price to pose without even acknowledging him. Price tells him, hey, he doesn't want any trouble. In fact, I actually wanted to go ahead and tell your opponent ahead of time tonight, out of the kindness of my heart. You see, this week you're testing your endurance and skill. You're going to be facing off in a submission match against one of the best technicians we have here in CWA. You see, at Last Man Standing, when we cross paths, you were chumming it up with your buddies, the DeColt boys. And the mere fact you were in their presence was enough to convince your opponent tonight to jump at this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Bloodstone. Segment gets a 72. Christian Price came across well, worked the crowd well, and improvised to advantage. Yeah. And we have a submission match coming up next against Johnny Bloodstone. In a bout that had fantastic heat and good wrestling, Sean McFly defeated Johnny Bloodstone in a submission match in 14:46 by submission. During the match, we also had Christian Price distract McFly. So McFly's, he kind of controls the majority of the first half of the match, even though him and Christian Price are like jaw-jacking at each other because he's still at ringside. But the tide finally turns when both men are on the outside, and McFly goes to get in Price's face, who's starting to taunt him even more now, and that allows Johnny Bloodstone to attack him from behind. He gets McFly back in the ring and keeps going for the Bloodstone mutilation submission, but McFly keeps managing to get away. Christian Price is so frustrated at this point that he stands up to distract the ref, at which point Bloodstone hits McFly with a low blow. But then, the DeColt boys run down to ringside and even the odds, buying Sean enough time to get back up to his knees. Bloodstone turns his attention back to McFly and nails him with a boot to the face, but now it's Jared Johnson's turn to make an appearance. He charges the DeColt boys with a steel chair, and he swings wildly at Ricky's head, who ducks right before the chair loudly clangs against the ring post. Bloodstone, at this point, he can't keep his focus, and with all this stuff going on at ringside, so he goes to the edge of the ring to kind of get a better view, see what's exactly is happening. McFly is back to his feet. He spins Bloodstone around, hits him with the DeLorean driver. At this point, the DeColt boys and Jared Johnson brawl out into the crowd as Sean McFly locks in, I don't know, what do you think Sean McFly would lock in as a submission? You can tell me in the comments. But, yeah, he secures the win, and he only has one challenge left. If he wins the next challenge, he gets a shot at the title, according to Christian Price, and if he loses, he can never challenge for the world title again. 77, and that's with Johnny Bloodstone really off his game. Cool. Alright, we have a video recapping the return of Tim Westybrook at Last Man Standing, with added clips of both Westybrook and the Man He Interrupted, Mountie Man, talking down the camera afterwards on Saturday. Mountie Man says that he wants Westbrook one-on-one, and that everyone is so happy that you're back. I can't wait to be the one to rain on their parade. And yeah, next week Tim Westerbrook's debut match in the CWA is going to be against Mountie Man. Segment gets a 63. Right, in a decent match, Laura Flame defeated Sally Ann Christensen in 10:28 by pinfall with a flame fire kick. These two have kind of had some exciting exchanges over the past few weeks. They were in some tag matches and multi-woman matches, and now they're finally going to have their singles match. And it's a true back and forth. Both women look like they may best the other at multiple points. But eventually it's Flame, she's that striker. She's got the kickboxing or Muay Thai, I don't remember, one of the two background. It says in her little bio. But it's those vicious strikes. They prove to be the deciding factor and ends it with that flame fire kick. Segment gets a 68. Yeah. All right. The Queen's Court are backstage with Samuel Curran. Or at least I thought I put him in there. Maybe I didn't. But yeah, he asked them what's next for the Queen's Court. Nadia Snow looks offended by this question because she says that nothing is next. Because our business with Amber Allen isn't over. You and your little friends gave us your best shot on Saturday and you couldn't get it done. You should have known better than to come at the Queen. And because you did, now the Queen wants to end this. And the only way this ends is with me as CWA Women's Champion. Segment gets 53. Not much to write home about. Alright, we see the Elite in their locker room. Christian Price is just pacing back and forth, and everyone kind of standing there awkwardly. They don't know whether to say something or just stand there or say something to Christian. But Drake Young decides to break the silence. Real nice, Sean. Taking advantage of a distraction to get the upper hand. We all know that Johnny Bloodstone had you dead to rights out there. Oh, and listen here to Colts. You better stay out of our way. Because if you get involved in our business again, you'll have to deal with the real best tag team in CWA. Sid Collier and Cam Jones both kind of smirk, and Young starts to continue, but at that point Christian Price stops pacing and looks right down the camera. He tells Sean McFly that he needs to listen and listen good, because he has his last challenge already prepared. You've been a thorn in my side for far too long, so next week I end this myself. Your fifth and final challenge is me. You don't deserve a shot at this title, even after a few victories that even I will admit have been impressive. But the only way you're ever getting another shot at the CWA World Championship is by defeating me next week. Good luck. You'll need it. So yeah, we have he's got to beat him in a non-title match next week, and if he does, like we talked about earlier, he gets a shot, and if he doesn't, never challenge again. Segment gets a 77, and Christian Price improvised well throughout the segment. Alright, in an exceptional match, Cameron Vesey defeated Skip Bowe in 17:38 by pinfall with a Vesey Driver 2. It's much like their first encounter earlier this year, but in its Bowe's strength versus Vesey's technical ability, but this time Bowe comes out a lot more aggressively. He gets the better of Vesey in a chop battle early on and lands a massive power slam. Picks up an almost limp Vesey and repeatedly knees him in the gut. The announce team at this point kind of noticed that Skip Bowe has a fire in his eyes, and every shot he lands is filled with anger. He's really hitting him hard. They also asked the question if Vesey should have even taken this match after his battle with Aaron Knight 5 days ago. Bowe hits a military press slam into a gutbuster, just like in the first match, but then he goes for another. This time he holds Vesey above his head for almost a 10 count, but Vesey grabs Bowe's fingers and kind of snaps him apart. Bowe drops to his knees, or he drops Vesey, falls to his knees in pain. He's kind of like holding his hand hunched over. Vesey runs and nails a running knee to the back of his head. Then he hits the Vesey Driver 2, and it's a 1-2-3. He wins. Yeah, segment gets an 87. Not bad at all. See, but we got one more segment. Because post-match, Vesey rolls out of the ring to avoid the wrath of Skip Bowe, and he celebrates on his way up to the ramp instead. Bowe sits in the ring with a blank stare. Davis Diderik says, "Guys, I think Skip Bowe was fighting with his heart and not his head tonight, and his anger ended up costing him." Then, Shooter Sean Dealey's music plays, and he walks out in street clothes. He and Cameron Vesey lock eyes, but Vesey continues walking to the back. The announcer still can't decide if he's still suspended or if he's been reinstated and they just didn't know. Sean runs to the ring And while Skip-Bo is up and meets him at ringside ready for a fight, Shooter Sean takes advantage of the fact that his foe's weakened, throws him into the barricade repeatedly. He ends up grabbing Bo, drags him up to the announce table, and picks him up and suplexes him onto it. Bo's back lands on the table covered in headsets and monitors, and it collapses. By now, all the officials have kind of come down to ringside, and Shooter Sean backs up. He's got his hands up, palms out, and he's like, he's done. He's not going to cause them any trouble, obviously, because he was suspended recently for hurting an official or pushing one. And yeah, he walks up, and the show ends with him smiling on the ramp, admiring his work. Segment gets an 80. Cameron Vesey came across well, and Cameron Vesey improvised throughout the segment. I thought, oh yeah, whenever he walked out, him and Cameron Vesey kind of locked eyes, and it was kind of ambiguous whether or not this had been planned, kind of like last time, or if it was just opportunity. You know, that we still don't really know what their connection is. But it seems to be that they always keep crossing paths, especially when Skip-Bo and Aaron Knight are involved. So we'll go ahead and finish the show, see what our rating is. 84. All right, the show increased our popularity in one region. Yeah, looking at it, I think we're just going to have to go region by region and have a really good show in each one a couple of times and just get our popularity up to 77 in all those regions and grow in size that way. And then I'm hoping we get a lot more broadcasting opportunities and stuff. So until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in a couple of days.